بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, we begin our lesson by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we pray that Allah make this lesson any reason where our sins and are forgiven, our prayers are answered, and Allah bless us and with the understanding, bless us and goodness in dunya and akhirah, and protect us from all difficulties, trials and tribulations, and bless us and your husnul khatima, ameen ya rabbal alameen. So inshallah ta'ala, based on our last lesson, we were speaking about the proofs for the wahdaniyah, that is the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, before we continue our lesson today, as usual, we will do a bit of revision. So the first thing is the author speaks about the three possibilities, that if you were to imagine that God is more than one, if a person were to imagine if God is more than one, what will happen? So there are three possibilities. These are the three things that we mentioned. The first possibility is that they come to an agreement, ittifaq. The second possibility is they come into a state of disagreement, ikhtilaf. The third possibility is they come into a state of sharing or helping one another, which is al-inqisam. So the author speaks about all these three possibilities and how he argued that it was impossible for them to occur. So the first thing when he speaks about al-ittifaq, that if the two gods they come into an agreement, to create something for example. And when we speak about substances, all substances they come from a single particle that cannot be divided. This is called jawharul fard. So in our last lesson we spoke about a term that is called jawharul fard, and in the translation it says indivisible element. So this is the smallest particle of a substance. So since it is something that is individed, then it is impossible for two entities to bring in two entities to bring it into existence separately, because it is an individual element. If we were to say that the first brought it into existence and the second one brought the same into existence, this is tahsilul hasil. That's what we mentioned. This is tahsilul hasil, to bring something which has already been in existence, and this is impossible. And likewise, when we say that jawharul fard, only one of them can bring it into existence, and if the first brought it into existence, then the second cannot be God, because he does not have the ability to bring it into existence. And if the second is not God, the first is also not God, because they are the same. They are of the same characteristics. So if you say that the second cannot become God, and the first also cannot become God, because of their similarity. That's what we mentioned, because initially we spoke about two gods. So if the second cannot produce it, then the first the second cannot be God, and likewise the first also cannot be God. If the first brought it into existence and the second one brought it into existence, the exact same thing, this is impossible, because this is tahsilul hasil, and that's what we mentioned. So this is the first possibility, the first situation where they come into a state of ittifaq. And then the author mentioned about al-ikhtilaf. Now what happens if they both disagree to create something? So the first, when we spoke about they agreed to create a particular thing, but it's just that when it comes to jawharul fard, they cannot be both creating the same thing. One of them is creating, so one of them is creating, the other one cannot become God, the first also cannot become God. And if one of them brought it into existence, the second one wants to bring it into existence, this is so impossible. Both of them cannot become God. Since we say that the second one cannot become God, the first one also cannot become God, because they are of the same nature. And then when comes into ikhtilaf now, ikhtilaf and basically they disagreed now. This is the second any situation. The first any wants any to create a particular movement. The author any gave an example of haraka and sukun. The first one, the first god any wants any to create any a particular movement, but the second one any does not want it to move. But the second one does not want it to move. So you have a clash any of two wills. The first any wants any to bring any movement into existence. The second one does not want to bring movement any into existence. So what will happen is there will be this impossibility and an impossible term that is called al-jam'u baina diddain, yani together two things any that are opposites, because something is either moving or not moving, and it is impossible any for us any to say that something any moves and not move at the same time. This is al-jam'u baina diddain, and it is muhal, it is impossible, yani to bring any two contraries any into one. So it cannot happen. It cannot happen. If and if we say if there is any ikhtilaf, whenever there is ikhtilaf and there is difference any between the two of them, then what is wanted any by both of them and it cannot any take place. What is wanted any by them and it cannot any take place, even though any we say that moving and non-moving any of a substance and is something that is possible, but what is any impossible any is the gathering any of two contradictories, the gathering any of two contradictories. So it is impossible any for this particular thing any to be in existence. This particular thing any to be any in existence. So it shows any that both of them any are incapable, and when they are incapable any they cannot any become God. Taib, this is any the state anywhere there is any a difference any between them. And if one of them any overpowered any the other, for example, one of them any wants any to bring movement, the other one any doesn't want any movement, but the other one brought it, meaning any the second any is incapable. When the second any is incapable and he cannot become God, and likewise any the first also cannot become God, any because any they are any of the same. And then lastly we spoke any about al-iqtisam or inqisam. So if, for example, both of them any share effort any to do a particular thing, then both of them any cannot become God, because any they are in need any of one another, and God any cannot be in need any of something else. That's what we spoke any about qiyamuhu bi nafsihi, and it is impossible any that God is in need any of something else, or God any created any a particular half any of a particular thing, and the other half is created any by something else. It shows any there is something that is created in his what you call it, in his creation, which he got no power of, and this is any impossible any for God. So an example any will be, if there are two gods, the first God any creates any half any of a sun, the second God any creates any the other half. So now both of them any cannot become God, any because why? Because the first God any creates in the first half any of the sun, and the second half any is not created any by him, meaning and his power is not encompassing any to the second part. Another God any creates it into, brings it any into existence. So if any the nature of the power any of God any is not encompassing, it is only any specific any to certain any creations and not any other creations, then this is any an evidence that he is incapable, yani to stop any something in his creation any from happening, or doesn't have any linkage of his power any towards part any of what is in existence any in his creation. So this is any impossible, yani this is any impossible. This one the author mentioned anna shart al-ilah an takuna qudratu ammat ta'alluq, and one of the conditions any of God is that the power any must be linked any to everything. So we cannot be saying any God has power, but his power is limited any to creating any certain things any is not by him, but it is by another God, and it shows that he is incapable, because something can happen any in his existence any without any his power being linked to. So both of them any cannot become God. So this is basically the proofs any for the oneness any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah any has to be one. It is impossible any that he is more than one. So I hope any it is clear, inshallah. If it is more than one, as what we mentioned, yani either they come into a state of ittifaq or ikhtilaf or inqisam. Yani instead of agreement or disagreement, any or al-inqisam. Now inshallah we enter back into our kitab. So let us just run through what we mentioned earlier. So we are in page 151. So you said if a rational proof, if you were not one in entity, attributes and actions, then nothing of the universe and it can be in existence. This is the first thing he mentioned. And then after that, the argument about the three possibilities, where the author mentioned, he spoke about Jawharul Farq, and all this you can read. All this actually we have, I believe, and I have covered everything. Because God is not incapable, it will entail that God who was able and is not a God, because it has already been assumed that he is like the other, and the other who is something that is incapable is also incapable. And when we say that the second God is incapable, the first God is also incapable, because they are similar. If both are incapable, then neither of the two is a God. If it is clear that both are incapable of bringing an indivisible element into being, it follows that they are incapable of bringing all other contingents into being. So when it comes to Jawharul Farq, they cannot, both of them, cannot be bringing any Jawharul Farq into existence, because it is individed. So in that situation, again, there is a gathering of two contradictories. But if you were to say that the first one brings into existence, the second one cannot become God, and the first also cannot become God. This is what I mentioned earlier. If they differ with each other, this comes of ikhtilaf, when they differ. If they differ with each other in such instance as one of them wanted to move a body in particular point, and the other wanted to keep it at rest at the same time, neither of their wills could be fulfilled, because there will be a gathering of two contraries. Jam'u bayna ad-dayn. It is invalid for neither of their wills to be fulfilled, because that will entail the rising of two contraries. So two contraries is impossible to be in existence. Even though a body can accept both, moving and not moving. It is invalid for one of them to carry out his will without the other, because the incapability of one is a proof for the incapability of the other. Same thing, that's what we mentioned. As he said, if they separated by choice, it will entail that both are incapable of affecting that which is with the other, because the condition of God is that his omnipotence must be generally linked with all contingently possible things. This is what we mentioned when it comes to inqisam. When it comes to what you call it, both of them sharing a particular creation. So our lesson today will be this. And today I'm not really feeling well. I do not know, maybe I will not take much time. Inshallah, I will just go on. I'm having what you call it, a flu today. Big dua, inshallah. Allah bless and shifa. So inshallah, I will just go on until when I feel, like not well, and to continue, inshallah, and it will stop. Okay, so now he mentioned this rational proof for oneness entails that the servant possess no independent efficacy in their contingent power, neither directly nor derived. They have only an acquisition thereof, which is the connection of the contingent power with that which is decreed, which there being independent efficacy. Taib ya Jama'ah, last time we spoke about kasbun. We spoke about kasb, and this basically the author is bringing it again. So because the initial the beginning of the part we speaks about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we say that Allah is one fi dhatihi. This is the first one. One in his entity. Wa fi sifatihi, one in his attributes, nothing has the attributes like Allah. And then we have one in his action. What basically by saying now here is everything happens by the action of Allah, meaning there is nothing that can give effect except that the effect comes from Allah. Then he spoke about the actions of insan, the actions of insan. So he said that part of speaking about the proofs of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is also speaking about the actions of the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not only we say that Allah is one in his entity, Allah is one in his attributes, we also say that Allah is one in his action, meaning nothing gives effect except by Allah. except any by Allah. What about any the actions any of the makhluk? And the example any he gave any is our action. So last time any we spoke about kasb, correct or not? So let us any revise again. What is the meaning of kasbun? The meaning any of kasb any there are a few things. Any number one we are speaking about our action. So for example, I'm lifting any my hand. This is any my action. Type when I intend any to lift any my hand, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala created the ability any in me that by this connection any between this ability and my action any of lifting any my hand, this is the connection and is the meaning of kasb. So the linkage any we say, the linkage any between this power that has been created by Allah in me and the action or my action any of lifting any my hand, this is any the meaning any of kasb. So if you ask any the question, what is the thing that gives effect that I'm able any to move any my hand, that I'm able any to lift any my hand, it is Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, the one any who created any this action. It is Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Allah yani is the one any who created any my action. So the power that Allah created any in me, it is just any a means. It is just any a means. It is not any that power any that create any this action, but it is Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is the one any who created any my action. But this action any is ascribed to me, correct or not? This action any is ascribed any to me. That I say that I lift any my hand. So initially any I intend any to lift. I have intention. I intend. So when I intend, Allah created in me that ability, and this ability becomes any the reason that I'm able any to lift any my hand. So the whole any process is a creation of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. This action any of lifting any my hand any is a creation any of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. This is any the meaning any of kasbun. So I hope for those especially any who has been following any my class, this should be clear to you inshallah. So this is just any a revision, and you can go back to the previous any pages and when the author any speaks any about kasb. I think when we're speaking any about the attribute of Qudrah, correct or not? And we spoke about attribute of Qudrah, we mentioned that the Qudrah of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is mu'athira, yani is the one any that gives effect, whereas the Qudrah of the power of other than Allah Subhanahu wa Taala does not give effect, but it is a creation of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So this in English and it is the meaning of efficacy. So if you look at the word where the translator any use, this is the one. The rational proof of oneness entails that the servant possesses no independent efficacy. Yani insan, thus we do not possess any independent efficacy in our contingent power. Again, the contingent power is a power that is created any by Allah in us. That Allah yani gave us any this ability. Neither directly any nor derive what you call it, because any we have any the viewpoint of the Mu'tazila, where the Mu'tazila believe any that the power that is created by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala in human beings any are stored in such a way that human beings any can use any that power, and by him creating any his own action any by that particular power. So this is also any not true. This is also any not true. They have only an acquisition in thereof, which is the connection of the contingent power, which is decreed without there with what that which is decreed, without there being any independent efficacy. So this basically the author is speaking any about kasbun. And then he mentioned further, he said there are three schools any of thought regarding the affirmation of contingent power. The school of Ahlus Sunnah states that it exists and that is connected with the action. This is the linkage, as what we mentioned. Yani, the contingent power is linkage and with the action. This is the meaning of kasb. This is the viewpoint of the Ahlus Sunnah. Without independent efficacy. The one who possesses any independent efficacy is Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the one who created any the action. The school of the Mu'tazila states that it exists and that it possesses efficacy in voluntary actions. Because the Mu'tazila is what we mentioned last time. They believe in stored power. That Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala created insan, and Allah stored power in insan and also in other creations. And they are able to create their own actions by that power. This is not correct. This is the viewpoint of the Mu'tazila. So the difference between Ahlul Sunnah and the Mu'tazila in this issue is that we say that human beings does not possess any stored power. Yani at the point of intending and to do a particular action, Allah created any that particular action and by the power that He created and in us by the contingent power. So it is by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and He created any this action when we intend to do that particular action. So that particular action and is not any by us and it is by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. He is the one and who brought the action and into existence, and that particular action and is ascribed and to us as custom, as an acquisition. The school of the Mu'tazilah states that it exists and that it possesses efficacy in voluntary action, because the Mu'tazilah, they believe any that they are able any to create their own action. The way of the Jabriyah states any that it does not exist any at all, because Jabriyah, they believe that human beings any got no will any at all, and everything is force. And all of our actions any are force. And not only they say that Allah created our actions, but we do not have any choice. This is any the viewpoint any of the Jabriyah. So he mentioned the correct school is that of Ahlul Sunnah, and the other two schools are false. Yani the schools of the Mu'tazilah and the Jabriyah are false. The school of the Mu'tazilah is in opposition to the rational and textual proofs, because any the rational proofs establish that there is no creator except Allah, the Exalted, and it is found in the rational proof for Allah's any oneness. So all this when we spoke about in the topic any of Wahdaniyah, in the oneness any of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and we mentioned any that everything any happens any by Allah, that Allah any is one in His entity, and it is impossible any that He does not have a power that encompass all of His creation. This is just we mentioned any earlier when we spoke about Inkisab, that it is impossible any that God any His power is linked any to part of His creation, not linked any to other part. There is something else in His creation that can give effect any other than Him. This is impossible, because this is the viewpoint of the viewpoint any of the Mu'tazilah. And so this is any the rational proof. As for the textual proof, yani dalil naqli, it is a verse in the Quran where Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentioned in Surah Zumar, and that's what He mentioned here. Allahu khaliqu kulli shay. Allah is the creator of all things, and all things include any our action. The school of the Jabriyah is self-evidently false because of the clear distinction between voluntary movement and trembling. So there is a difference between an action that you intend and an action that you do not intend. And for example, if you are shivering in cold, this act of shivering is something that is not within your intention. You do not intend to shiver, correct or not? But it comes to you forcefully in that sense. So there are certain of our actions voluntary actions. There are certain of our actions that are involuntary action. Just like when a person is sleeping for example when he's moving for example, or some people sleepwalk and so on. This is an involuntary. So there is a difference between voluntary action and involuntary action. So this particular thing refutes the claim of the Jabriyah. The upshot of all this is that the power and the action of the servant are both creations of Allah. And this is basically what he's trying to say, that every action, every human actions, every actions of the makhluk is a creation of Allah. He who created contingent power and choice within him, the servant, is able to command him. And Allah created the power in us. And Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala created our actions, and at the same time Allah gave us choice. Allah gave us the ability to make a choice. So that is why there is taklif. This is what he said. That is why there is taklif. So taklif when it comes when there is ikhtiyar. When the servant, the human beings are able to make choices. But if human beings are forced, then there is no taklif. There is no point of taklif. If you are forced, then what is the meaning of the verses in the Quran when Allah speaks about what you call it, Allah is testing insan, that liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala, they need to test you which amongst you has the best of all deeds. So how can Allah test you when you are forced? So this is against the Quran. So the view of the Jabriyah is going against clear verses of the Quran, that Allah gave insan the ability, and Allah gave rewards to those who obey Him, punishment to those who disobey Him. So there is this taklif, there is this choice of insan, and Allah is just. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala sent prophets and messengers to do da'wah to insan. So insan is the one who make the choice whether to believe or not to believe. So there is no such thing as people being forced by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. even if the servant does not possess independent efficacy in that. Even if the servant does not possess independent efficacy, but he is tested by Allah, because Allah judge you based on the choices that you make, not by the actions that you do. Because your actions, yes, they do not possess independent efficacy. Your actions is not from you, in the sense that you do not create your own actions, but it is ascribed to you because you intend for those actions. That is why when a person drinks liquor, he is punished for his drinking of liquor, even though he says that, for example, I do not create this action of liquor, but you make the choice to drink liquor, and Allah judge you based on the choices that you make, and not the actions that you do, because the actions is a creation of Allah, but Allah judge you based on your choices that you make. So this is what he said, even if the servant does not possess independent efficacy in that, does not possess any independent effect to give effect on anything. Here Allah is not asked about what he does. Allah, is based on the verse in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, La yus'alu amma yaf'al wa hum yus'alun. Allah is not asked what he does, but other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask Yawm al-Qiyamah. And then he quoted a poem from one of the books of Tawhid, Ida'ul Dujunna, the power of the servant, and other than that are all creations of the all-powerful King. Yes, he possesses acquisition. By it, he is legally responsible, and this is the meaning of taklif. That how any human beings becomes any mukallaf, because of the choice and the acquisited action, kasb, that is ascribed to him by his intention, and yet he possesses no independent efficacy that is known, because his actions is a creation is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he explains again the meaning of kasb, as what I mentioned in the beginning of the class. And this is important that we come into a profound understanding by revising and reading again and again about this definition. Said acquisition is a connection, is ta'alluq of the contingent power, the relation between the power that Allah created in us and our action. So this is the meaning of kasb, this the relationship. So this is the definition. So for those of you who have the book, please underline this and write down there. This is the definition of kasb. The connection is the ta'alluq of the contingent power with an action, without there being an independent efficacy. So please underline this. In addition to this, there is no efficacy within the conventional customary means. Likewise, when it comes to fire, for example, the customary means ahkamul ada. Ahkamul ada, all any creations do not possess independent efficacy. He gave an example of fire. Fire has no effect in combustion, water has no effect in quenching, a wall has no effect in preventing a shade, a garment has no effect in covering, a knife has no effect in cutting. And we can go the list on and on, and everything that you see, mashallah, and we speak about science and all these things, and it goes through here. That everything that we see, it does not possess any independent efficacy. When you are thirsty, you drink water. It is not the water that quenches your thirst. When you are hungry and you eat food, it is not the food that makes you full. The food and the water does not have independent efficacy. This is the meaning. When you see fire burns, and it is not fire that burns. Allah is the one who make it burn. So fire does not possess any independent efficacy. So all these are asbab, and this is based on ahkam al-ada. And no other causes or contingent things have effect, for there is no doer but Allah. So this is the meaning of tawheed fil af'al. At-tawheed fil af'al, oneness in action. So every action comes from Allah. Clear, inshallah. Then next week, inshallah, we will enter into the next part. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. I do not know if there is any question. There is no question. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa sallam. Jazakumullah khair.